Doctor Who's about to turn 60 years old, and I'm desperate for a reason to talk about it on this channel again.
Nice to see you again.
I know it's predominantly animation reviews, and Doctor Who's animated offerings are less plentiful than they could be, so what is there I can offer my thoughts on? Maybe one of the things that's endeared me to every era of the show in some way: the art. Specifically, the art used to promote the show on books, home video releases, and in some comics. In a way, it makes every story in the franchise a piece of art in its own right. Every single one. When Doctor Who began in 1963, the only ways it was advertised were through radio and newspapers. It was just supposed to be an educational show teaching kids about history and science. But then the Daleks appeared, and shillings were about to rain down. Of course, the decimal system hadn't started yet. Most of the first Doctor Who merchandise was based around its second serial, the Daleks, including toys, costumes, candy, and books. The two most popular being the Dalek book, a collection of stories and comics in an annual format, and a novelization by the show's script editor David Whittaker. You can tell where their priorities were, right? The art for the Dalek book and collectibles, while not settled into our current understanding of the canon, is nonetheless imaginative. I really like this mid-20th century sci-fi art that incorporates such rich shadows and exotic locations. And the novel's art by Arnold Schwartzman is super dusty, but you can still see the effort in it. But as Dalek Mania simmered down, the art for the collective Doctor Who brand was given more focus. The Doctor was the focus of many annuals and comics, either to flesh out his adventures, give him some random kids to babysit, or chronicle his meeting with Popeye. After the first regeneration from William Hartnell to Patrick Troughton, there were some growing pains in getting Troughton's features just right, but they were fixed in a couple months. One of the most striking pieces of art from this time was for the 1969 annual by Walter Howarth. The TARDIS being stormed by the Cybermen, the Doctor holding Jamie back from a confrontation, and the cover for the following year's annual is foreshadowing. The show was given a major shake-up in 1970, new Doctor, played by Jon Pertwee, new Earthbound setting, and new colour. It seemed to be a good set of ingredients for the art departments, with the more familiar settings slimming down their scope but giving them more aspects to hone in on. The Radio Times art by Frank Bellamy is top tier, but he didn't have much competition. This doesn't tell you this is a sci-fi show, this tells you dad's picking you up from the railway. These tell you to stick funny things on your shirt, and this tells you not to talk to strange Time Lords. I don't know what people were on in the 70s, except I totally do. A big change to the way fans saw every individual story began in 1973, when Target started publishing a more frequent set of novelizations. And of course, each book had its own beautifully rendered cover, often illustrated by Chris Achilleos. Now when you thought of the Web Planet, you didn't have fading memories of clumsy Zarbies and smeared camera lenses, you had this attention grabber. Zzz. While there is a certain legendary status to the early covers, I think they hit their stride around 1975, as they were given more colour and added the diamond logo text. As the art got bigger in detail, it helped to elevate even the shoddiest serials and make each one seem worth revisiting on the page. Remember, at this time, home media was a luxury item that barely any film and TV studios had jumped on. So this was how you had to view a story if you never saw it on its first and potentially only broadcast for some time. You never need to know the Doctor barely wore a bowler hat in Horror of Fang Rock. The biggest dark age in this format came at the start of the 5th Doctor's tenure in 1982, where I guess out of a hurry to get his adventures in people's hands, they mostly settled on photos or really lazy photo montages. Things were back to basics after a year, but not before 2 covers where Peter Davison is just hanging out inside the logo. Why haven't more companies done this? You can see through the Target range that the art gradually acquired a more hand-painted look. That makes many of the covers in the 80s and 90s especially vivid, if a little uncanny at points. At least it takes your eyes away from the template, which got really tacky in later years. Most art for Doctor Who and other media was not going through this transformation for a while. When Doctor Who magazine began as a weekly, the covers were either photos or previews of the comic strip. When the franchise made the jump to video games, we have this artist channeling his inner Andy Warhol. And now it's time to see the jump to home video. In October 1983, this hit the shelves in the UK. Revenge of the Cybermen, now with a photo, and a photo from a title sequence that wasn't created until 5 years after the serial aired. The photos used for the Doctor and the Cybermen are also too recent to represent the serial. This thing was so bad that it was completely replaced on the second print to feature more period-accurate assets. As you can see, there was still some development to be made. The early VHS covers from 1984 to 1988 are largely dull, with the Arial font drawing more attention than the action. But these things take time, and as VHS sales went up, so did the quality of the artwork. At the start of 1990, they began to do paintings for every release, and most of them are quite immersive and tell you what the adventure is going to look and feel like before you get to see for yourself. I'm a bit less fond of the art used for some of the black and white serials, but they had to be washed out as a rule to let the customer know it wouldn't be in colour. Since the show was no longer being produced on an annual basis, these painted covers give off an almost mythic quality. They say that this is a multi-generational legend, with many different faces and avenues of exploration. If you weren't around to see the Crinoid Menace or the Ghosts of a Perivale Mansion, we'll show you. Welcome back. Silver Nemesis cover. While I'm mostly focusing on the releases of the TV series now, just using the earlier spin-off material to explain the foundation, it would be apt to show some love for the Virgin New Adventures book covers as well. They were seen as the most official continuation of the show in the 90s, including odd TV appearances, and the art on these puppies is pretty interesting too. But when they came to an end in 1997, so did the oil-painted era of Doctor Who art. With a swirl here, a light source there, and a stock photo in the middle, we're rapidly approaching Y2K. I'm sure many older fans have a rocky relationship with this era of Doctor Who art. You could argue these new book, VHS, and later DVD and audio covers were less artistically deep overall, being less impressions of the work, and more gussied up production photos. There's a couple standouts, like the Five Doctors reprint and the Face of Evil's striking cold stare, and the Big Finish audio covers are usually good at conveying what the story will be about, but most of them felt like they were trying too hard to be like modern movie posters, which sets expectations too high for 10 to 35-year-old TV episodes with the budget of a muffin. You also had to go through phases of them experimenting with certain effects, like this vortex pattern that was discarded early on, and the cloud ones that make it look like you're being asphyxiated. The DVD range took a few years to cultivate a style just like the VHS range before it, but by 2002, it was looking like Clayton Hickman was onto something. I guess it was because of the template being way more cramped, with the header creating a lot of dead space that some of the later covers were not having any of. At least the US releases didn't have this problem. As a matter of fact, they had entirely different art for the longest time. I could never guess the reason, but some of these are way more engaging than those used in the UK and Australasia. Call it nostalgia, but this era of Doctor Who art has been one of my favourites, mainly because it was the style I was first exposed to as a kid. It set me up for disappointment sometimes, sure, but at a time where the classic series was aging rapidly, it made each story look cool and worth remembering. It was exciting to hear when a new DVD was announced and speculate on what colour and photos would dominate the cover. It was an easy template for fans to work with and create their own art. Wait, there's a new series? When Doctor Who came back in 2005, it could fully embrace the internet for advertising. The new series got its own website where every new episode was accompanied by new promotional pieces on a weekly basis, culminating in this little piece of melancholy. A rare but not extinct use of traditional painting to promote Doctor Who. In the video stores, you could be a chump and buy the new episodes in volumed sets, or wait until the end of the year and get them all plus bonus features in a box set. I wouldn't have thought the volume strategy could work in theory, but they kept releasing new episodes this way until series 10, so some people are interested in collecting them this way. But about the covers, they're photographed based like all the classic releases by this time, but are usually only representative of 1 or 2 of the episodes of a DVD containing 3 to 4 episodes, the standalone releases of the holiday specials being pleasant exceptions. I'm a fan of how they updated the aesthetics with every season. Series 2's crystal theme has nothing to do with the show, but it makes its presence known. I can't really call out the photograph approach for making them appear too modern here, because this was as modern as you could get at the time, and you were mostly getting what you saw on the cover. By around 2012, the marketing team must have known there was some stagnation, because they upped the ante for series 7 and 8. Every episode was now advertised with a stylish poster, with 8 going for retro-styled minimalism, and the DVD artwork finally returned to a more surreal aesthetic. It's hard to tell if the method was image editing, painting, or a mixture, but the results have been awesome, especially the work of Lee Binding. Some of the new series artwork, but most of the classic artwork, has maintained this look since the 50th anniversary, and I think it really helps sell the franchise's legendary status like the old artwork, while keeping it accessible for new audiences. Okay, maybe not all the time. Some of the recent Blu-ray covers have been on the uncanny side, but it still makes it clearer the stuff inside was made a billion years ago. I do really wish the new series kept this up more consistently. The modern poster style has worked to some extent, but how cool would some of this imagery be if it was painted? I guess we don't have to wait very long because some new series episodes have been novelized in the classic Target format, with Chris Achilleos inspired covers designed by Anthony Dry. They feel more like 1950s film posters than drawings due to the filters used, but I can't hate these. They're still pretty good at capturing the style. I know this art style is among the most fondly remembered and the most commonly recaptured these days, but it's been a long road since the early Target covers. We may someday see a revival of the gritty 90s style or the more approachable 2000s style. It could happen. Doctor Who was created through imagination, wisdom, and hope. That first ingredient being what has driven so much of the art I've shown off in this video. So I'm always excited to see what its future has in store.